Hi, it's Lucy, and today I'm here to read the Six of Crows duology in 48 hours. If you are not aware, I'm doing basically a reading vlog kind of series where I read the entire Grishaverse and vlog it, or reread it, I should say, because I have read all the books except for Rule of Wolves, which this is kind of in preparation for, also in preparation for the Shadow and Bone TV show coming out in April. I have already read both of these books and love them. These are my favorite books in the Grishaverse, some of my favorite books of all time, especially this one. And yes, so this video will not be spoiler free. I will be telling you everything that happens in these books, or as much as I can reasonably fit into these videos. This is meant both to share my opinions with you, and also if you haven't read these books or it's been a while since you read these books, it's also supposed to be like a refresher in case you don't want to go through the trouble of rereading, which is fair. I also reread the Shadow and Bone trilogy. I have 3 separate reading vlogs for that. I want to do a 48-hour reading vlog for this because I just didn't want it to take as long, and I think I can do it. My last 48-hour reading vlog, I read 7 books, but they were all children's books and relatively shorter. So 1,000 pages in 48 hours. Can I do it? We are about to find out. If you don't know what the Six of Crows duology is about, it is set in the Grishaverse. It's set in a different country area than the original Grisha trilogy, the Shadow and Bone trilogy. This is set in kind of the country of Kerch in the city of Ketterdam, which I believe is the capital. And we follow 6 people who are kind of part of this gang, and they end up getting pulled into doing the heist of their lives. We follow them as they do that, and we follow their characters as they develop through that. If you are watching this video before checking out anything else about the Grishaverse, I do recommend reading the Shadow and Bone trilogy before reading these books, because there's a lot in here about Grisha that I think you just won't pick up or know about without reading those books, because this book doesn't really detail any of the magic system or anything like that. It kind of assumes you already know, or you pick it up as you go along, but it would be easier to pick it up from the first trilogy because it does go into detail, explains a lot of how magic works and things like that, even though the magic isn't as big of a part, but it's still there. And there's also some Easter eggs in this book that you wouldn't catch without reading Shadow and Bone. It is 10:34 a.m. on Saturday, March 20th. I have until, I guess, 10:34 a.m. on Monday, March 22nd. That's how time works. And that's that. I have lots of things to do this weekend. I'm actually planning on straightening my hair, which if you have my hair texture, you know that that's a whole feat. I am planning to listen to the audiobooks while I do that so that I don't lose time. This is one of my favorite favorite books, specifically Crooked Kingdom. Can't wait to get to this. I am a little nervous rereading it because I'm like, what if it's not as good? But I really liked the Shadow and Bone trilogy when I reread it. Once again, reading vlogs are linked in the cards, not to self-promo too much. So I feel like it can only go up from here because I didn't like those that much when I originally read them, and I ended up really liking them this time around. So I feel like it'll only go up, right? I'm 128 pages in, I'm on chapter 9. We have had perspectives from all the main players except for Wylan. I don't think we get Wylan's perspective in this book, or if we do, it's 1 or 2 chapters actually. The last chapter we just finished was for Jesper, who I love. They've introduced the big plan, basically. They're breaking into the ice court. They broke Mathias out of jail. Maybe this is blasphemy, I don't know, but I never really liked Mathias, and I'm now remembering why. I didn't dislike him when I finished Crooked Kingdom, but I was not as broken up about how Crooked Kingdom ends as everyone else seemed to be, because I don't know, I just didn't feel for him as much. I felt for Nina more. Who I really do enjoy. I'm also making slow progress. It's 7:30 right now, so hopefully I can finish this tonight. I don't know. I have a lot of things I need to be doing, but we're working on it. So we watched Mathias kill wolves, and for some reason in the back of my head, I'm like, he can talk to the wolves, but I don't know if that's true. I think he just has like a special connection to the wolves because they like raise them from when they're born and stuff. And Mathias tried to kill Nina, which I forgot and makes me dislike him even more. So there's that. We're introduced to Wylan, and we find out that he's Wylan Van Eck. He's the guy who hired Kaz's son, and Kaz is keeping him for their protection because he figures, oh, like if we have a son, he's not gonna like double cross us because he's gonna want his son back. What little does Kaz know? I forgot the little, I don't really think it's banter. Jesper was just kind of mean to Wylan. which I forgot happens. I know they must get nicer to each other, obviously, because I love that shit. Right now, I'm struggling to remember why I liked it so much, because I don't know, but I'm sure things will happen, and I will recall. So right now, they just have the idea of going to the ice court. Kaz has come up with the proposal of basically getting themselves arrested so that they can go into the prison, and then they will end up rescuing the guy. I don't think I explained this very well at all. Basically, Dregs was invented by some guy from the shoe. He was trying to defect from the shoe because the shoe were using the Dregs to like make Grisha soldiers, basically. The guy, whose name is Yul Bayer, doesn't want his invention to be used that way, so he was trying to defect, but he ended up getting captured, I think by the Fjorda. Somehow the Fjorda have him now, and they are going to try and rescue him. And the Fjorda would obviously keep a high-value prisoner in the ice court, which is like their #1 fortress. It is impossible to break in, everyone knows. And that is the impossible heist that these people are about to go on. So that is what they're planning. They had to rescue Mathias from prison because we don't technically know yet, so I won't say it. And they needed him because he is Fjordan, and he's the only one who really knows anything about the ice court. That's all we know so far. I am enjoying it. I remember thinking the first half of Six of Crows was a little slow because we're getting all this setup, and I still feel that way. I'm now a little over halfway through Six of Crows, part 4, chapter 21, page 256, 55, 57. So far, lots of things have happened. I'm a little behind on this 48-hour readathon because it is now 12:25, which means it's been a little over 25 hours, and I'm only halfway through the first book. Wish me luck. We're still gonna try and do this. I think I can do it. I just need to focus today. I didn't stay up last night. I went to bed at like midnight, but maybe tonight I'll go to bed at like 1 or 2 a.m. I have a lot to do today, so I really don't know how I'm gonna get this done. But yeah, they had just broken Mathias out of jail, and then they planned to go to the ice court to go to Fjorda, and they all were going to meet at the boat. And then there was a plot to kill Kazbrekker and the team, but they still managed to escape. We get this battle scene where all of the crows are individually fighting people. And so we see mostly Jesper and Inej's point of view in this battle. Jesper, I love him. His chapters are always so fun, even though they're literally fighting. The first line of the chapter is, Jesper always felt better when people were shooting at him. It wasn't that he liked the idea of dying. In fact, that potential outcome was a definite drawback, but if he was worrying about staying alive, he couldn't be thinking about anything else. And that really describes Jesper. And then we also get a cute little scene with Jesper and Wylan, and that's where I think I started shipping them. Basically, towards the end, Wylan sets up a bomb, and Jesper's in the crow's nest, and Wylan shouts up at him to close his eyes, and Jesper says, "You can't kiss me from down there, Wylan. Just do it." Wylan sets off the flash bomb, which blinds like all the enemies so that Jesper can take clear shots at them because he closed his eyes, and Jesper thinks not bad for a mercher's kid, which the start of something new. And then we also get to see Inej, who ends up almost fatally wounded, and we get to really see like Kaz's first real feelings for Inej. After that, Kaz really actually seems desperate. It's the first time any of them have seen him like that. So we get to see like a little hint of how much Kaz cares for Inej. We also get to see a hint, very blatantly see how brutal he is, how brutal this book is. I remember being like, oh my god, Six of Crows is so much darker than Shadow and Bone, but it's really not. I guess it is darker in the sense that all of these people are bad people intentionally doing bad things. I guess not all of them, but you get what I'm saying. They're all criminals. And whereas Shadow and Bone, they're part of the military, so it's a different kind of thing, and they're not in the business of torturing people, or at least the characters we saw weren't really. Here, we get to see Kaz carve someone's face up and then pluck out his eyeball. Disgusting. It was awful. With his fingers. Ugh. Yeah, he's wearing gloves, but oh my god. And we also through this torture find out that it was Pekka Rollins who sent the people to attack them after them. I don't think I talked about Pekka Rollins yet, but basically Kaz has kind of a one-sided feud with him. I think it either gets explored even more in the end of this book or in the next book about how it's one-sided basically. But he's the reason that Kaz decided to become who he is now, and so it makes them think that maybe Pekka Rollins is sending his own crew to try and get Yul Bayer the guy with the Jurda Parem recipe. We spent some time on the ship, and then I marked like a little thing. I just really like the inventions that Leigh Bardugo comes up with for her world. I really like Nikolai's inventions in the Shadow and Bone trilogy, and we got like one here where someone invented, I don't understand what it is. I think it's a snorkel basically, but it basically they bite down and it forms a film over their face so that they can breathe for like 10 minutes or so, and it's supposed to be if they go overboard, and it fits in the back of their teeth, which doesn't make any sense. How big is the space in between your teeth? I don't know. I couldn't fit anything in there. I just thought it was an interesting factoid. And then we get a little hint at the end of that chapter. This is a Mathias chapter, who I still am not liking. I'm disliking him more than I remembered. I liked him, so I feel like Crooked Kingdom does a lot of work for him. I don't remember. But at the end of this, they kind of have a little group of banter where Jesper says, if Pekka Rollins kills us all, I'm going to get Wylan's ghost to teach my ghost how to play the flute just so that I can annoy the hell out of your ghost. To Kaz. And then Kaz says, I'll just hire Mathias's ghost to kick your ghost's ass. And then Mathias says, my ghost won't associate with your ghost. And then he questions if the sea was rotting his brain. But it was just a little hint of them being friends. We also get a little hint of the girls being friends, which I really enjoy, because Nina has been spending all her time healing Inej because she was so grievously injured, and also Nina's been stressed because she's not a healer, so she doesn't really know what she's doing. She's just doing her best. Inej wakes up, they get to talk a little bit, they have a little conversation, and Nina keeps trying to get Inej to sleep, but Inej doesn't want to sleep, so she has Nina tell her stories, and it just seemed like a nice cute moment. And then we also get a moment with Jesper and Inej, who, you know, obviously know each other. They're kind of the two closest people to Kaz, even though Inej is closer. But Kaz trusts him, even though it's hard to tell when Kaz trusts anyone, which he also has a conversation about with Wylan, because Wylan is like, we don't need a sharpshooter for our plan, but Jasper's like, he trusts me as much as he can trust anyone, I think. Then Jesper and Inej talk about Kaz basically, and Inej is disappointed that he didn't really visit her, and Jesper is like, I think it was just hard for him to be around you when you were hurt that way, and he went a little crazy the first day when he was hurt because, you know, he plucked out a guy's eyeball and then he threw him over the ship. I forgot about that, because honestly the eyeball thing was worse. I mean, that guy's dead now, but I don't know if this is really foreshadowing, but Jesper and Inej were talking about Wylan and why he's there, because why would he leave his like nice home with this very rich merchant and everything? Inej remarks that she doesn't think Van Eck kicked him out because he writes him letters, and the letters say things like, if you're reading this, then you know how much I wish to have you home, or I pray that you read these words and think of all you've left behind, which we will find out what that means later. We also find out that the reason Jesper's on this trip, like he agreed to go, is because he needs the money because he took a loan from his dad, whose farm had just turned a profit, and he told his dad that he needed it for school when he was really using it to gamble. I don't know, I think this is kind of the weakest backstory, because basically how Jesper got into gambling is he came to Ketterdam for his school, and then he went to East Dave, which is I guess where the, not casinos, but you know, gambling dens are, and he like couldn't look away after that, and he basically quit school so that he could gamble. And then one day he got jumped and Kaz saved him, and then they started doing jobs together, and that's how he joined the Crows, which is really sad. How the mighty have fallen. Makes me sad. We get another example of Kaz refusing to be seen as a good person, because they were talking about the ship's captain who Kaz hired, who is being the ship's captain because Kaz got him the money that he needed from his pension after he was thrown out of the Navy, because he has a sister to support. And Inej remarks that it was nice of him to get him his money, and Kaz makes it clear like, no, I didn't do this out of the goodness of my heart, there was money to be made. But then he also reveals finally why he hates Pekka Rollins, because Inej mentions that she's noticed how everything seemed personal to him about that man, and he says that Pekka Rollins killed my brother. And we get a little bit more of Kaz's backstory and what led him to here, and we find out that him and his older brother, after their father died, they sold their father's farm so that they would have money, and his older brother Jordy planned to like become a trader on the exchange, which I guess is just like the stock exchange. Ketterdam is known for trading, it's basically like Wall Street, but he couldn't get a job until one day they met someone who was like, I'm gonna start working for this other group of people, you should come. And they hire him to like run their trades. Basically, he wanted to be a runner, which is I guess someone who just runs around letters. It's I guess an in-house mail person, I don't really understand. But they ended up being scammed, because one night they were with this family of people and they said, oh, we're gonna make this big deal, and Jordy wanted to get in on it, and they were like, oh, you don't have the money, and they were like, no, we have money, and they were like, oh, you need that to live though, right? And he was like, no, I want to like get in on the deal, we could make more money. And they let him get in on the deal, and the people give him a loan, and Jordy ends up giving him all of their money basically, and then the next day they return to that place to find everything empty, and they've been scammed. By the way, I was thinking at the beginning of this, I'm like, was it really their fault? But no, it's really their fault. Jordy was like 13, I think. Who scams a 13-year-old child? Like, what? I know everyone's like cutthroat and only money matters, but a child? That's a lot. But then again, they're all 16, 17, which once again doesn't make sense. I know like there's been a lot of discourse over the years about how all the characters should really be aged up, and I'm really feeling it now. Yeah, they really don't read 16, 17. And then we get Mathias and Nina's backstory and why Nina and Mathias hate each other so much. The original reason is because all Fjordans think that Grisha are basically the devil, they're witches, unnatural beings, and they all deserve to die basically. But their specific history, basically, Nina ended up captured by Mathias and his crew of Dregs, which are the people from Fjorda whose like life mission it is to capture the Grisha, and they're like revered members of the military, I think, or revered members of the community basically. So his crew captures Nina and a bunch of other Grisha, and honestly Nina was kind of stupid because she was not even 10 minutes away from her Grisha camp. She was with like Zoya and someone else who's, I didn't recognize their description. She like had run away from them. She was not that far. She could have yelled out, they could have saved her. I really think they could have taken those Dregs people, but she was like, no, I won't reveal their location, so she just took it. And I'm like, I feel like they could have taken them, especially Zoya, I'm just saying. But she didn't, so they got captured. They were on a ship, and Mathias was one of the people. The only reason they ended up together is because the ship crashed during a storm, and they were the only two survivors, and Nina is a nice person who decided to save Mathias. So they started to get closer because they were the only two people alive, and then they were wandering around for a while and growing closer and closer. And the reason that Mathias ended up in jail was because Nina ended up caught by other Grisha soldiers. Not caught, but they saw her, they recognized her, and they were like, what are you doing here? We thought you died. And they saw Mathias with them, and they would have wanted to capture Mathias and keep him prisoner, and she didn't want that. So she ended up in a situation where she was trying to save him. Maybe Nina's not the smartest, and she ended up in a split decision moment deciding to tell a Kirch trader that Mathias was a slaver, that he was kidnapping her. And so because the Kirch are like bound or take slaving seriously, allegedly, they captured him, took him back to Ketterdam, and put him in prison, and that's what happened. And then Nina stayed trying to figure out how to get him out of jail because she couldn't recant her statement, or they wouldn't let her recant her statement, and it was a whole mess. And that's why he was in jail. That's why Mathias is mad at her. Blah, blah, blah. The thing is, I just don't feel like they're even. Like, I don't think their hatred for each other is even at all, because in the next scene, they end up seeing a group of Grisha being burned to death on a pyre. And obviously, all of them are distraught, but Nina is especially distraught because, you know, she is a Grisha, these are her people, and she says, this is what Fjordans do to Grisha, and Mathias tries to defend it by being like, it's what criminals do, pyres have been illegal. And then she turns around and says, don't you dare tell me the last time someone was prosecuted for putting a Grisha to the flames. Do you even call it murder when you put down a dog? Do you have a different name for killing when you wear a uniform to do it? And it turned out one of the people being burned to death was still alive, and Jesper ended up being the one to shoot them to death to put them out of their misery. Like what I was saying, dark. And then Nina starts to run away, and Mathias follows her and says, Nina, you mustn't stray from the group. And Nina says, that's what you're going back to, Helvar. That's the country you long to serve. Does it make you proud? And he says, I've never sent a Grisha to the pyre. Grisha are given fair trial. Then why has a Grisha never been found innocent at the end of your supposedly fair trials? Because our crime is existing. Our crime is what we are. And then he has the audacity to say, Nina, has it ever occurred to you that maybe you weren't meant to exist? And there needs to be a lot of rebuilding for Mathias for me to get over that. And they do eventually make up or come to a detente or something. Nina remarks that she's like, oh, you saved my life. But I'm like, he was only around to save her life because you saved his life. And also the only reason you were together is because he put you in a cage at the bottom of a ship. So like it doesn't feel equal here. And nothing Mathias says has made me like him anymore. So he's officially my least favorite character. Did not expect that. I really was indifferent kind of the first time I read it, I think, but now I'm like, why? My thing is, I used to say I like hate to love, but I don't. I like dislike to love. It's really hard for me to get behind hate to love where one person literally thinks someone is not meant to exist in the beginning. It's just hard for me to buy their change of mind. And I know the Grisha oppression is supposed to be like an allegory for real world oppression, and there's lots of things that can be said about that. These allegories work better for me in believability, I guess, when it's pretty clear that there's no other form of oppression in this world, and this is a fantasy story that takes place like distinctly away from our own world. So it doesn't really bother me as much. It doesn't make me think so much about, okay, we're having this Grisha oppression, but what about the racism? Because there isn't really any racism as far as I know. Since this is an allegory, Mathias is the white supremacist here. And I know people can change, but it would be hard pressed for me to be like, okay, now you're allowed in my specific life after, like, even if you saved my life, I guess. I don't know. It's all weird to me. I don't like it. So they all go back. They end up going back to walking because they're trying to get to the ice court. And they end up attacked by a Grisha who has been dosed with Jurda Parem. I'm mentioning this because Wylan ends up using a bomb that saves them. And Jesper remarks, Wylan earned his keep. And Wylan's like, really? And then Jesper's like, well, you made a down payment. And cute little banter, I'm enjoying it. His name was Nestor. At the end of Nina explaining like why she ended up turning him in, they both decide that they don't want Yul Bayor to live because Jurda is too dangerous for basically both their sides. The Jurda Parem for Grisha is bad for the Grisha and is being used by other people who don't believe that Grisha are people or worthy to make them into super weapons that end up basically self-destructing, which is what happened to Nestor because he was so addicted. He needed it, and it was also making his body extremely weak, and all the other people who had tried it before that we know of ended up dying as well because they're so addicted to it. It would be bad for the Fjordans for Grisha to have this because in theory if Ravka was willing to use it, it would make them supremely ultra powerful. So yes, that's where I'm at. Like I said, I'm a little over halfway through. I'm trying to finish this in the next couple of hours. I am supposed to be editing a YouTube video right now. I don't know if I'm just gonna read instead. We'll see what happens. This might end up being not a 48-hour reading vlog, and I'm sorry. Hi, clearly I look very good right now. I finished Six of Crows by Leigh Bardugo. I was listening to the audiobook as I am doing my hair. I'm straightening my hair. And now I'm gonna update you all and tell you how I feel about the end of the book, tell you what happened at the end of the book. Not quite the end of the book. I think where I left off last update, they had just gotten to Fjorda and they were like on their way to the ice court. Yes, they make it to the ice court. They start to enact their plan where they basically get into a prison transport to get themselves locked in the prison so that they can gain entrance, because their idea was like, oh, they'll be paying attention to people coming in through like the front entrance, but nobody's trying to get into the prison, and they don't pay attention to people going out of the front entrance, so that's how they'll leave after they get Yul Bayor. Kaz is supposed to like open the prison transport, but he freezes because it is revealed that basically Kat has a touch aversion because of what he went through with his brother. Basically his brother, after they got scammed by Pekka Rollins, they had nowhere to live, so they ended up living on the street, and there ended up being an outbreak of some kind of pox I don't remember, and really fun hearing about while we're living through a pandemic. But anyway, it seemed like smallpox almost, or it was killing a lot of people, and they both caught it, and his brother ended up dying. And because they were like laid up together on the street, the people who picked up the dead from the street picked them both up and put them on a dead body transport. So he, Kaz, was still alive, being transported with a bunch of dead bodies and was piled under them, and so he developed a touch aversion from that, and then he had to use his brother's body as a raft. It's really dark. So because of that, when he opened the prison transport in present time, all the people were touching each other, and he realized he was gonna have to be one of those people, and it caused him to like panic. But he does get it together in time for them to get people off of the transport and for them to take their places, but then he passes out on the transport. Inej is the only one who notices because she's the one next to him, but he couldn't like take being next to all those people. So that happened. They do get past it. They do get to the prison. They don't get caught. The girls, Nina and Inej, are separated from the boys because that's what all prisons do, apparently. We mostly follow the guys while they're imprisoned behind bars. We find out that Jesper is actually a fabricator. He's been a Grisha this whole time and he hides it from most people. Only, I think, of the crew, I think Inej and Kaz obviously knew. So that was the real reason he was brought on this mission, heist, trip, job, whatever they call it. And it surprises Wylan, and Jesper uses his fabricator abilities to take the metal from the bars to make a lockpick. The girls get out, but basically the people who are supposed to meet up at the incinerator, which is where Inej is going to climb up to the top of the place through the incinerator. I think Nina and Kaz end up going around the prison to just check if Yolbayor is in the prison, even though they don't think he's in the prison, but just in case. Even though it wasn't supposed to be Kaz, but he decided to change his mind at the last minute. So we get to see Inej climb an incinerator with like no purchase or anything. It's just like flat brick. I have no idea how she did it. She almost didn't do it. She thought she was gonna die in there. We get a whole scene with that, and it's real sad. And then she's like thinking about her parents and everything, because she was actually stolen by a slaver, even though they're not supposed to be allowed to have slaves, but you know, who's gonna believe her? So also while she's in there, she kind of comes to the realization that she can like help other people. So that's her plan after this. She wants to use her money to like get a ship and then like work to stop slavers. Which is a noble cause. But yes, she makes it to the top of the incinerator after thinking she won't get to the top of the incinerator. I think when I first read it, I was like, damn, is she really gonna die here? But obviously I've already read it, so I wasn't as stressed because I knew. And in the meantime, Kaz and Nina are searching, and Nina ends up in the area where they keep Grisha prisoners, and she's obviously kind of not traumatized, but she is scared of it. She spent time while she was at the little palace learning all she could about Firda so she wouldn't be scared, but when she was there she was like, I want to go home, I want to go back to Ravka, I don't want to be here anymore. And that was really sad. And in the meantime, Kaz is looking, but then he ends up finding, well, he's really looking for Pekka Rollins, and he ends up finding him, and they talk or something, but because he spent all that time looking for Pekka Rollins, he ruined the plan basically, and Nina was supposed to meet him at a certain time and he wasn't there, so she goes looking for him. So she ends up getting caught up with two guards, and she has to not fight them off, but she kind of fights them off, I guess, or like puts them down with her, you know, heartrender abilities. But she ends up meeting like other guards, and somehow the alarm gets wrong and they're put onto yellow protocol, which means they added another checkpoint to the area that they were trying to get into. And it kind of renders their plan a little bit useless, so they have to come up with a new plan. So the new plan involves Nina and Inej using their feminine wiles to be one of the people from the pleasure house from Ketterdam, the one that Inej was originally brought to. And when they try to get in, unfortunately, Inej ends up being caught, not quite caught, but they stop her, and so Nina ends up going in alone, and the boys end up going through a roundabout entrance. So while Inej is outside, the actual owner of the pleasure house recognizes her because they ended up taking the place of two of the people who were actually supposed to be from the pleasure house, and the actual owner of the pleasure house recognizes her and is like, that's not one of my girls. She's here with renowned villain criminal Kaz Brecker. Like, the Fjordans are supposed to know who he is. He's not actually renowned, so it didn't make a lot of whole sense. They capture Inej, kind of. Not really capture because she was already there, but you know, they were like, oh, she's bad, and like put her away. I don't know how to explain that. In the meantime, Nina's inside and she starts talking to Jarl Brown, who was Mathias' like leader, captain, I don't remember what you call him, while he was a Druskel, and Nina thought he was dead because he was on the ship that crashed, and they thought everyone on the ship died, basically, because it crashed. But somehow he survived. But Nina takes it upon herself to try and get him to like reveal information and like hope he forgot who she was, basically. So they end up going to this basement part of the treasury, I think, of the Ice Court, because Nina pretends like, oh, she wants to see Grisha, like she doesn't like Grisha, like they're all bad, like all the Fjordans believe. And he takes her there, and plot twist, he knows it's her, and he locks her in one of the cells, And Mathias comes up, and further plot twist, and he's like, yes, I had to give you up, and blah, blah, blah. Jarl Brown is like, oh, we'll figure out how to help you, Mathias, and blah, blah, blah. And further plot twist, Mathias didn't actually betray them. He betrayed, I guess, his country technically, but also his country's bad. So he just did that so that Nina could get the information out of him technically. Before Nina talked to him, Mathias had seen him in the ballroom area, I think it's what it was. And he like went up to him and like pretended to be sorry about not being with the crows, and he was like, oh, Nina like forced me to come here with her, she has a terrible plan, and blah blah blah. So he went and got Nina and did all that, and then Mathias ended up suffocating? Not suffocating because he's still alive. He really should have killed him, just saying. He made Jarl pass out, and they're like, oh, you betrayed our country and blah blah blah, and who cares? You all suck. Your whole country sucks. I know we don't say that in the real world, but in the fake world, your country sucks. And in the meantime of that, I forgot, Jesper and Wylan are trying to make Black Protocol exist, which is like the worst protocol. Like they were originally supposed to not make it happen, but they had this whole plan with the gates, basically, to try and help them escape. And so they had to blow up a gate, or not blow up, they had to like break a gate. And there were bombs and stuff. We got to see cute moments with Jesper and Wylan, and I enjoyed that. Inej is able to escape, so Jesper and Wylan end up kind of saving her from custody. And in the meantime, Tante Aline, which was the name of the owner of the pleasure house, Inej managed to steal her diamond because they needed it to blow up the gate. Yeah, that's what happened with Jesper and Wylan, and Inej was also there. I should mention that. They all come together basically at the end, and they think they're about to escape. They get in a tank, and they're so close to the port, which is where they're meeting their boat. But the beach is full of soldiers, of Fjordan soldiers. There's so many, and they have their own Grisha who's hopped up on Gerda Parem. So they're like, we have no chance. But then Nina, oh, I almost forgot the most important part. I'm so sorry. Nina and Mathias end up finding where Yolbayor was supposed to be, and they get there and they're like, you're not Yolbayor, you're 15. They end up finding a guy named Kuei, who's Yolbayor's son. So Yolbayor ended up being killed when the Kurds tried to rescue them a different time. Yeah, so he was killed, but they kept his son because he had worked with him, and he said he like could potentially recreate Gerda Parem, but he'd been stalling. They rescue him, there's a whole brawl kind of thing, and Nina and Mathias are like contemplating killing him, but then they're like, he's a kid, so they end up not killing him. But then they end up getting caught by the Druskal, and they like send them over the edge to their death. And anyway, they make their escape, and remember that invention I was talking about? That was useful because they leapt into water, so they were using that to try and keep water out, but Kaz's ran out of time basically, and his ran out before, and he passes out underwater, but don't worry, he's saved, he's fine. Nina saves him, and she doesn't even get a thank you because that's who Kaz is. So yes, back to the end. Sorry I skipped that. They did rescue somebody. They're on their way out, and they're met with all those soldiers, but Nina decides to be a hero, and she's like, I will take Gerda Parem and get us out of here. And they're like, no, don't do it because it is so addictive. Apparently, allegedly, if you take it, you always want more. But then Kuei, who is Yolbayor's son, is like, after the first dose, it's possible to like detox and not want it anymore, allegedly, but it might also kill her. But Nina is like, I'm gonna do it, so she does it. She like is a badass. I mean, that was an epic scene, I'm just saying. And she almost kills all the Druskals, but she chooses not to because she loves Mathias and blah blah blah. And afterwards she's like, I'm not sure if I made the right decision. And I'm like, bro, you didn't. The answer is no, you did not. But they get on the ship, they're on their way to Kerch. Nina has to detox, and because of that happening, it's kind of a somber trip because they're all a little worried about Nina, but they go to collect their winnings, their money, and they find out that they had been had. Mostly Kaz had been had, obviously. We also find out that basically Wylan agreed to be tailored by Nina while she was still under the effects of the Gerda to look like Kuei, so they used him as a decoy Kuei because Wylan reveals that he knows his dad does not care about him and he knows he's not good leverage. So he agreed to do that to kind of prove it, and also so that he could finally for sure know how his dad feels about him, which was really depressing. And it's also revealed that Wylan is technically illiterate, he can't read, he has issues reading. And like for real, like I know there's so many bad people in this book, but like you don't love your son because he can't read. Not that if your child has any kind of mental disability, you should rescind your love, but like he's actually smart in like most other ways. He was making all those bombs, he knows chemistry and shit. Like, it's so wild to me that this man, like, it's so mustache twirling villain for his dad to be that way. And it's so extra mustache twirling villain because his dad is like, I have a new young wife and she is pregnant with our new heir, and our new heir will be way better than Wylan could ever be because that baby will be able to read. Like, what? So anyway, Van Eyck reveals basically like, you ain't getting your money, you're not leaving this island, I'll just kill you all. Just tell me where Kuwait is. And they're like, no, we leave and then we'll tell you. And so it starts a brawl, and Kaz accidentally reveals Inej's location because she's like above them, you know, scouting, doing what she does. She's a spider, she's a wraith. And she ends up getting captured, which is fun. And by fun, I mean sad. Obviously, Kaz is distraught, and then he yells at Jesper because it turns out that Jesper is the one who accidentally revealed that they would be going on a trip. He says while he's in a gambling den, oh, I'm good for the money, like I'm about to come in a lot of money, I'm leaving tomorrow, and he didn't realize what he was saying, but it means that Kaz can never trust him again. It's also revealed a little bit that Jesper and Wylan have a sort of thing, because then Jesper gets mad at Wylan for changing his face like that because they don't know if they're going to be able to get it back because now Nina's not under the influence of Jurda, and it's not normally within Grisha capabilities to change people's whole entire faces like that. And Wylan's like, what do you care? And Jesper's like, maybe I liked your old face. And it's cute. So yes, that's how it ends. And so Kaz has a new plan basically. He goes to Pekka Rollins because he let Pekka out of the prison in the ice court, and so he owes him a favor. He asked Pekka to give him $200,000, I forgot the money, $200,000 in Kirch monies, and some other stuff in exchange for Kaz's hold of the Crow Club. And Pekka's like, this is not going to be enough to get past the Merchant Council or that merchant, Van Eyck. And Kaz is like, I have a plan, and blah, blah, blah. And that's how the book ends. That was very adventurous. Now I'm going to finish my hair. I'm going to start listening to Crooked Kingdom.